You or someone you love is a high-achieving executive or entrepreneur. Others expect you to have it all together all the time. But the truth is this: it takes a tremendous amount of energy and hard work. You sacrifice a lot and are wondering if it's really worth it. People make changes for one of two reasons: from the rock bottom of desperation, or from a point of inspiration. Welcome to Season 2 of our LinkedIn Live series, where we will spend the next 6 episodes focusing on a vital yet often overlooked aspect of leadership and personal development, unblocking and harnessing the flow state. We'll explore how tapping into this state can significantly amplify your potential as a leader and bring a renewed sense of purpose and fulfillment to the role. Tune in as we explore Heart Coherent Leadership, a transformative approach that aligns emotional intelligence with decision-making. Discover how it elevates your leadership and transforms your organizational culture into a more dynamic, responsive, and innovative environment. Every week on Freedom Flow Fridays, join Dr. Anna Davies, Dr. Amanda A. Carpenter, and myself, Suzette West, as we expand the conversation, delving deeper into the realm of heart coherent leadership and the transformative power of flow. We invite you to join us as we unblock the flow to your freedom, week by week. Hello, hello. Can you hear me okay? I can't hear you, though. What's happening? We're having technical difficulties this morning.
How about now?
I can hear you now, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
There was like an auto mute. I unmuted it and then okay, we should be good.
Yeah, we're good now. Apparently Dr. Davies is having some technical difficulties, but if she jumps on, hopefully we can catch her up and get her into the conversation.
Been a week of technical difficulties. Zoom did some weird stuff for me. The heart coherence monitors were doing weird things this week.
Yeah, the frequency is all over the place right now. Maybe it's Mercury retrograde, who knows? But yeah, so welcome everyone. This is Suzette West and Dr. Amanda A. Carpenter. We're waiting on Dr. Davies. Maybe she's having some difficulties, technical difficulties, but we're hoping that gets solved. And if she does, she'll maybe join us in a little bit. But today our topic is all about creating flow in teams. And this is episode 2 of season 2, Freedom Flow Fridays. Thank you so much for joining us, whether you're on live or you're joining us on a replay. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you for your time and your attention and for joining us. So so we're just gonna kind of start off with, we always start off with a heart lock-in. I don't know, Amanda, did you want to start us off with heart-focused breathing or?
Sure. So everybody just drop down and just use your mind's eye to drop down into your heart chest area. And imagine your breath is flowing in and out of this region, breathing a little slower and a little deeper than usual. Just find an easy rhythm that's comfortable. You can keep your eyes open, close your eyes, whatever's comfortable. And this is a technique that we don't have to take a time out for per se. We always do when we start. However, you can be in the midst of a team meeting and need to, focus and ground your energy and collectively bring everybody together. And this is a technique that you can do, live with a group of people. So it doesn't always have to be done as a timeout and pause. It's not a meditation. It's actually a grounding, a flow state, a focus technique. So if you're a little bit fatigued and you want some energy, this is something that can actually give you energy. If you're ungrounded and you got triggered in a meeting, this is also a technique that can reground you. So it can be done in the midst of everything and anything.
Yeah, it's a really helpful, very simple, but very effective tool that really helps us to, get out of our heads, get back into the body, because when we're living in our heads, we're playing all kinds of narratives, and not all of them are helpful, right? So, so let's just kind of kick this conversation off, creating flow in teams. And we're just going to keep it really high level. We're going to touch on 3 points. First of all, what do we mean by, what is flow? What is flow in teams? How does that look like? What is that, how does that look like? And then 2, what blocks the flow? What blocks the flow in cultivating flow in teams? Like, what gets in the way? What are the barriers? How do we block that flow in teams? And then finally, we're just going to touch on, what we can do to unblock the flow in teams. So we're just going to keep it really high level, very simple, 3 simple points. And so, Amanda, if you're ready to kick things off, let's talk about it. What is creating flow in teams?
Yeah. So it is so interesting. This is something that's so simplistic to those of us who do it on a regular, consistent basis. However, when we are in our triggered 3-year-old state, this is not so easy. So when I work with teams, they know what the flow state is. They like, yeah, I've been there before. Yeah, when everything is just jiving and flowing, but they don't know how to repetitively achieve it. Right. So a lot of them have been there before by accident. And then what we can do is come in and say, okay, this is how everything can align. And really, coherence is the collective coordination of everybody and every system working together. So if we think of a crew rowboat, everybody is rowing in sync, right? And that can be a difficult challenge in reality because our minds are going in a million different places. So the kind of like in the old paradigm, it was like, oh, you checked your emotions at the door and you came to work. That's disassociation. That doesn't work. Through disciplines, somebody might have tried to do that, like ignore, forget about. But as we all know, the feelings inside of us have a frequency of vibration that comes out from our heart field. So when our words are not aligned with what we're feeling inside, there's this incoherence, this inconsistency, and we're not as effective and efficient as employees and teams as we possibly could be. So first and foremost, coherence is everybody working together, which also means we need to have some sort of practice to manage our energies. And I'm going to use the word energies instead of emotions, because that emotional word in the workplace is a difficult one. But really, by definition, emotions are energy in motion. Yep. So if we come into work with a lot of high energy, anger, frustration, irritation, we need to move that energy so that we don't bring it to the conference table.
Yeah, that's really, really important. And if we think about, so if we look at the individual, we all have our own energetic field environment that's created by the heart. So the heart creates this electromagnetic field that can extend several feet outside of the body. And it's within this field that we our emotions, our thoughts, it affects the quality of the environment. So, for example, like let's say you're speaking to someone and you just have the sense this person's not feeling good, but they're telling you, "Oh, I'm fine, I'm fine." You know they're not fine. And it's because they're even though their words are saying they're fine, their energy that they're putting out into their field environment is saying a different thing. And so we affect the field environment with our thoughts, with our emotions, and people can pick up on it. Animals can pick up on it. Like if you are angry and you're approaching a scared dog, they're gonna pick up on that anger because it's that field environment letting them know this person is angry. So it's an energetic language, for lack of a better word, but it goes into our field environment. Now, when you have more than one person, what forms is a collective field environment. All the individual field environments come together to create this collective field environment. And when the individuals are not aligned, or they have different beliefs, or they're operating on different expectations, when expectations are not aligned, that shows up as disharmony. And it looks like, okay, here we go.
I apologize.
Dr.
I,
Dr. Davies.
hello. Having some
Hey.
having some technical issues this morning.
Yeah, yeah, it's in the air right now. It's in the air right now. So yeah, glad you're here. Glad you can make it. So I'm just gonna catch you up. So we're talking about the field environment, the electromagnetic field, how each of us have our own, and as we uh, combine with a group, that forms those individual field environments, creates a collective field environment, and this is actually where we're either going to create flow, or this is where a lot of the this is where a lot of breaks down in within relationships, within people in a group. So when we're not aligned, when we're not on the same page, um, in collective group environments, it shows up as misalignment on teams. It's hard to get tasks. The simplest tasks is like pulling teeth. Uh, this person has a different idea than this other person. We're not seeing the same destination. We're not moving towards a common vision because each person has their own idea of what they need to be doing. They have their own idea of what the vision is. And so everyone's pulling in different directions, which makes it you spend even more energy trying to get the thing done because everyone is going in different directions. And so that's an example of when things are not in flow. So we were just explaining, what flow is, what it looks like in a group setting, and that is when when people are on the same page, people are seeing the same vision, they know they have a role in making this vision come to life, and everyone's got their part, and they're working in alignment together towards that common vision. I mean, that is basically what flow looks like. It becomes an effortless thing because we got each other's back. We know what we're doing. We know our part in this thing that we're doing. And so things are flowing. It becomes easier, like it seems almost effortless, right? But when we're talking about misalignment, that's when things get harder. Things are harder to accomplish. People are not understanding one another. There's communication breakdown, there's frustration, and then stress climbs, right? So I'm going to just kind of leave it right there if anyone wants to chime in on what cultivating flow in teams What does that look like? Anyone else want to add to that?
So I would say in cultivating, like, so I hear you saying, like, how do we make this happen? How do we cultivate it? So one of the things that's really important is we first need to ground our energy, right? There's this idea that we can bring our collective hearts together and we can come into the flow state and coherence. But as I mentioned earlier, emotions are energy in motion. So if there's too much high emotion, then we can be a jack in the box half a crank away from popping. So we can regulate that jack in the box, but there's a lot of energy to try to regulate. So first and foremost, being aware of where is our energy. Are we in a depleted state and we need to raise that energy a little bit? Are we in a high energy state and we need to ground ourselves? So some grounding techniques to discharge some of the high energy can just be jiggling and shaking, can be taking some deep breaths. I love lion's breath or like dog panting breath, like just moving that energy, right? Like you're doing something with it. You're getting it out of your body so that you can ground yourself to be in that creative, innovative state. Now, if we're in a lower energetic state, a sadness, a grief, an apathy, that's where that heart focused breathing can bring us up for a moment. But if there's a lot of stuck, I do a lot of work with grief. And if there's a lot of stuck sadness, it takes a lot of energy to suppress that sadness, and anger is the bodyguard of sadness. So we have to move that on our own, right? We can move the high energy states together collectively, but to cry collectively and really move that energy doesn't work as well. So we can ground through that and then say, you know what, I need to have a self-care cry session. Like that is self-care, giving ourselves permission to feel that. And then we can ground ourselves through the heart and create that collective.
Mm-hmm.
So you mentioned something earlier. Oh, go ahead.
No. I just want to say, so like, how do things break down in collective environments? Like, what are some of the things that kill creativity within a team, that kills the spirit? Like, I would, right off the top of my head, like judgment. Judgment. When
So one
someone
of the
feels judged.
so one of the things, as being a leader, I use my words as positive, uplifting. I have my own techniques that I use with my heart math, and I breathe and I process, and I allow, when there's a negative situation, I focus on the positive and I look what can be learned. So one thing is the passion, being understandable, and being one with your team is very important, because if they feel that you don't care about them, then they're not going to care about anything else.
Mm-hmm.
So when I have a issue with someone struggling, I just, I use my calm words. I use my motivation, right? I use words of inspiration, and I point out the positive, and then I basically say, hey, how can I help you? You tell me how I can help you. Because when someone's not feeling good or they're having a bad day, um, your words can be a power
Mm-hmm.
of life, or it can just make them shut down and just have a
Mm.
negative attitude of work. And I have developed a system to where I make sure that I am positive and they see the passion in me, and I try to maintain flexible, being adaptable, and
Mm-hmm.
making them feel like they belong.
Right. Yeah. You touched on something really, really important, Dr. Davies, when you said you use your words. And a lot of people don't realize it, but your words have power. There's energy behind those words, and it's determined by the intention, right?
Yeah.
What intention are behind those words? And that is an energetic thing. So if you are criticizing, that's cutting. That's
Correct.
cutting energy. But if you are coming from a place of concern and I care, that softens.
Correct.
That softens and makes it so, look, I'm here to support you. How can I support you? That is
Correct.
that feeling is nurturing.
It
It
is.
means like, I care, this person cares about me, they're more willing to open up. But if we're criticizing, judgmental, that's cutting. That is
Correct.
a cutting effect. So the power of words is huge. I mean,
It is.
it could be a game changer in
It
the
is.
way that your group shows up, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, we've got a couple of great comments. I'm not sure if they're still with us, but Bethany said an assistant geological instructor at my university is usually the bad apple in the bunch, very argumentative with his peers, which causes negative results in team effort. So that is something that really we can get this undercurrent in cultures. And the most powerful energy, emotions are energy, the most powerful energy on the team is going to be the overarching energy. So it's so important to have this individual coherence happening, because one person can hijack the culture of an entire organization and create this undercurrent. So when we're talking about the collective coherence, we have the coherence of the individual, as you mentioned. We also have the coherence of the most powerful people on the team collectively together. And then we have the coherence of the team. That's a lot to manage. Right. So we've got to do a lot of that, dumping of energy. And as Dr. Davies mentioned, when it comes to caring, there's that famous quote, people don't care what you said until they know that you care. Something, do you guys know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I think it's nobody cares what you know until they know that you care.
Yes, something
like that.
Right. So that energy that's putting into the field, we can say some of the most difficult things, but if it's from a place of grounded love, it lands differently, right? So, but what it takes for a leader to be there, like, I can definitely tell Dr. Davies has it. She's got it. She's done her work, right? She can be in that lower grounded energy of love, so that when she's saying something to anybody she's working with, no matter what it says, it's not going to land with the harshness. Correct. However, if we have an unevolved leader who is in their own self-judgment, who doesn't love themselves, they can try to act that way, but it's not going to land the same way, right? It's going to actually, it's going to be words without the energetic. And really it's the energetic more than it is the words.
Yeah. Yeah. And especially if the leader is insecure for any reason, then there is this thing of defensiveness, a need to control the situation, to maintain safety, to maintain, like, I'm the leader. Maybe they feel threatened that somebody will usurp their position. Like, these are signs of an insecure leader. And whenever we're talking about insecurity, that is a corrosive energy. I mean, it is not a generative frequency, for lack of a better word. It's just, it puts out there that, I am not confident in my ability to lead, and I'm afraid someone is going to replace me. And then and some people get downright mean when they feel like that. Like, they get really adversarial, and everyone becomes an enemy because they have to protect their position. So we got Joyce here. Heart focused breathing is a huge part of my program, helping homeless and abused children and teens. Self-discipline is also essential to form a foundation of willingness to have the desire to rise from the ashes that damaged their lives. Totally. Yeah.
Yeah, and Suzette, you just touched on something, that anger, that control, that micromanaging. We want to remember that our nervous systems there's an animalistic part of our nervous system, right? So if we imagine, instead of being, in the work environment, we're in the forest. A leader that's unevolved and a leader that feels like insecure and judgmental is going to be in fear. So they're going to respond with anger and rage. Those are the protective energies. They almost can't help it, right? So fear will make somebody. Anger is always the bodyguard of the lower energies, the depleted energies of fear, of sadness. It's the protector. And it's a part of the animalistic nervous system. And so often I see that that's discipline. Like there's a disciplinary action to anger. Don't bring that in here. And really what we need to do is to help people move that anger. Right? We don't culturally, we don't, for generations and thousands of years, there was ways to move that energy, dancing and drumming and singing together. We don't have practices like that anymore as a rule in the US anyway. Right? Even in the 90s, there was dancing in clubs. There's not a lot of that anymore. So we don't have a natural way to move energy. And one of the things that could be really helpful is for organizations to have some way to move that high energy. Even using music in the midst of the workday. Martin Smith was on earlier. He's a DJ that actually works with corporate. And so that's exactly what he does, is helping the team meetings and big corporate events to let people move that energy. And every Monday he has a live on LinkedIn. I think it's at noon, that we can tap into if we're on LinkedIn and move some of that energy ourselves. So music is a great way. It doesn't have to be like, we don't have to be panting together and yelling and growling. We could be like dancing and jiving at the lunch hour.
Yeah. Like, the community aspect of celebration and that energy of just, being in good company and celebrating something together. Dance is a celebration. It's a celebration and a kinetic celebration. I love dancing. So when we're talking about, and Martin Smith says, okay, thank you, Martin Smith. Yay. Awesome.
Yeah, that's a great way that, and dance is one of those things that doesn't have to, it is a celebration, but it doesn't have to be just a celebration. It can be a way to move that energy and
just move the energy. Yeah.
Just move the energy. And there's some really great research on how we hold ourselves shifts our chemistry inside. Amy Cuddy, going back to 2012, power postures. There's a great TED talk out there. So if we are dancing and we're moving and we have somebody who is in fear, after that dancing and movement, they can actually feel more confident, and there can be more innovation happening in that work environment, more problem solving that's happening in that work environment after even just a shift in that postural alignment.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I would like to add something, also when you're talking about having a team coherent, as you know, I'm on the front lines of the battle of the homeless, of addiction and mental health and the homelessness. And one thing is the passion, the communication style, but also, being one with your team is very important. Um, if someone doesn't feel like they belong, they're not going to want to come to work. And especially if you're in a field that is, dealing with a difficult population that need help, that resiliency, they need, we are considered change makers, healers, because, but, humans need to feel like they belong and trust. They have to trust you if they want to change. And same with your team. If you're a team and we're out here fighting a battle, we all need to be on the same page, because if your team does not trust the leader, therefore they're not going to fight that battle with you. And so passion and caring and belonging and having that mutual respect is very important.
Yeah. And you touch on a really, really important point there, Dr. Davies. And it brings to mind this often talked about, and I would say to the point where it's probably turned into a buzzword, but it still remains relevant, is this thing called psychological safety. Psychological safety. There's this great book called The 4 Stages of Psychological Safety. I can't remember. I'm going to post the link on the replay in the comments to this book, but it's an amazing, amazing book. And it talks about the 4 stages of psychological safety. And it is really important. I know it's a buzzword. I know everybody's talking about it, and it's just like people hear it and oh, whatever, but it's psychological safety. If you don't feel safe in an environment, that environment is going to be draining. That environment is going to, it's not going to be one that is healthy to be in, because when someone doesn't feel safe, there's anxiety, there's stress, there's just, and
And I,
that's depleting.
and I also want to say there's more mistakes made and low productivity, and they're in the survival mode and making huge mistakes that can cost companies a lot of money.
Mm-hmm. And Joyce West says, Dr. Davies, I could not agree with you more. Very well said. Awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I would say, go ahead.
Yeah. Good morning, everyone. Team coherence is the key to workforce resilience. Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah, going back to that concept of safety and psychological safety, like you said, there's a buzzword out there, but what does it really mean, and how do we really cultivate that psychological safety? Because everything related to human behavior comes down to, do we feel safe or not? Right? Because we will use all of our resources to feel safe, and that'll pull away, as Dr. Davies mentioned, from productivity, from cultivating innovation, from creativity, from problem solving. And if all of our energy is going towards feeling safe, more mistakes are going to be made. And I've done a lot of work in the industrial athletic world, and that can be a matter of life or death. If somebody doesn't feel safe, if they have a manager who is yelling at them and they don't feel safe, they can make a fatal mistake with a chainsaw 150 feet up in a tree that ends their life, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that psychological safety is something that is so important. And it really comes down to the nervous system. Does the human feel safe or not? And a really amazing evolved leader has the ability to read the field and to know, is there safety here or is there not? And to be able to adapt in the moment. Like, that's really what makes an amazing evolved leader, is they are so grounded in themselves that they're not using any of their own resources to try to feel safe. They're not in self-judgment. They have unconditional self-love for themselves, so that they're able to use all of their energy to read the situational and sense the situational awareness of what's happening, and to know who needs what when. That 10,000-foot approach, that's an evolved leader, right? So we have to start with the one in the mirror, and then we can cultivate this psychological safety on a team. So I've worked with teams before, and I've been in teams before where the leader doesn't feel safe, but yet they're using that buzzword. So they're trying to create this culture within the organization to force trust and to force safety. And their feelings, you can't teach them or force them, right?
No. And that's very, and another thing that an evolved leader has is that they're also able to suspend judgment. They're able to create neutral energy, which means we suspend our judgment, we step outside of ourselves, we're compassionate, we're listening with intention to, find common ground, not judge, because our minds are always judging. Like when we're choosing what kind of shampoo to buy, or when we're choosing, what kind of product to buy at the store. I mean, we need that judgment, right? But sometimes we use judgment to box people in and throw out labels, and you're bad and you're good and this is bad and this is, we use judgment in hurtful ways that can really handicap the dynamics in a group. Okay, because if people feel judged or they don't feel safe to speak, to contribute, they will stay silent. They will do the minimum to just collect that paycheck and go home and give very, very little of themselves, or let alone contribute any innovative ideas they might have. They won't feel safe to share that because they'll fear that they'll be judged, that they'll be criticized, somehow look foolish. And so they just kind of, fade into the background and then just do the minimal thing. And while compliance seems like, things are smooth on the outside, the output from these individuals who are disengaged is quite a different story. They're not going to give you their best. They're going to give you what's necessary and what the minimum that the job is calling for. And sometimes the job needs a little more. And this is where the big losses happen.
And I got to add something. Different fields have there are different kind of losses, but in the field that I'm in, a human loss, I will not have that on my hands. So one thing is with the team is the leader has to be there with the team, has to show them, and so they know that, because I'm not a leader that will sit here and say, hey, you do this, do this, do this. No, I'm going to show you, and I'll continue to be on there. So they have that more respect of, oh, the leader is actually doing the footwork actually out in the field, and I love what I do. That passion, that drive, the human life in my hand. Oh no, I know how to work with this person. When you're dealing with individuals, a human that has a low self-esteem and they've been so broken, you got to go in there gentle and you got to show them. And that's why I love what I do. My passion, my love outweighs the bullshit.
There you go. There you go. If you want to see what a passionate leader looks like, here we are. We got one on stage with us. Dr. Davies, I really appreciate you and all the wonderful things that you and your team do to help people get their second chance in life, because so many people, they fall through the cracks. And unfortunately, that means that some people don't ever come back from that. And but you're out there, you and your team are out there doing some really good work. And so,
And also, I would
thank
like to
you.
say, my team, I make my team feel like they belong. So what happens? That energy goes outside to those that we serve, and they feel like they belong. That's the key. Is, oh, I trust in you to help me get better. And so that's why team coherence is so important in my field, because we're
Mhm.
dealing with human lives, second chances.
Mm.
People have been so traumatized, and to make change, they have to feel like, okay, I trust this person to help me, but then I really don't. And we accept them for who they are.
Right.
It's very hard to be in this field and dictate. You got to show and be a part of, be an active leader in the community, doing exactly what others are doing. I am not one who sits back. I am on the front lines with my team, and that's how I got their respect.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, and that's
Mhm.
a great point. I mean, the difference between a leader and a manager is just that, right? A manager sits back and tells everybody else what to do. You'll never have coherence in that situation. A leader believes in themselves, believes in their team, and is in the trenches
Exactly.
with the team. They're
Exactly.
willing to do the work. They're willing to sweep the floor. They've been in the trenches, right? Just naturally, it's hard to have respect for somebody who's telling us what to do when they are not boots on the ground and they're not doing it themselves because they're so far removed. Right. So we can label that as a boss or a manager, but a leader is going first. They're doing whatever it is, and they're doing, right? It's who they be, the radiation, the vibration of love, but it's also the doing aspect of they're willing to do it first in front of everybody else. And so leaders can create and cultivate team coherence. Managers and bosses, you have an underlying current within the culture that is distrustful, and in talking about some of those things that kind of hijack coherence, that's one of them. When you have this collective, what do they call it? It's almost like a trauma bond where everybody is against the leader, and so you get this connection of the team because they're against the leader. That is not healthy.
No.
That is not healthy at all. That's
Mhm.
such a waste of energy, right?
Mhm.
So, but a leader themselves is going first, and a leader themselves, they have passion for what they're doing. So they're willing to suffer, because the root of the word passion is to suffer for. So they're willing to suffer for. They're in the trenches alongside, and they're going first. Right?
Mhm.
They're not sitting up there on their high horse telling everybody else what to do, but they're going first, and they're in the trenches doing the work. That's a true leader, and that's the foundation of what it takes to build a coherent team.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
great share, Dr. Davies. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. So that brings us to, our final point that we're making today, and that is, when the team flow is stuck or not moving, what do we do to unblock that flow for the team? Like, well, how do we do this on a collective, in a group setting? How do we unblock the flow when things
Well,
feel stuck?
I'll tell you what I have done, right? I have been able to speak to my team. I've been able to inspire. Once I inspire, and I was like, we're going to work together, right? And we develop a solution. And every single time, it has worked because they're a part of the problem solving process, and
Mm,
I'm able to identify, and it works every single
mhm,
time because you
mhm.
motivate. I'm so proud of you. I'm honored and privileged to be with such a wonderful team, but we have some areas we need to work on. Let's work together. Let's problem solve together. And it always works.
Now, Dr. Davies, when you first stepped into your current role, you took an active you took actions to really make your team feel like you cared about them. You wanna talk
Correct.
about that process? How what you first did when you stepped into that role? How did
You
you
know, that was a very simple step because my passion, because I have that true recovery because of my love for what I do. I was able to transform that, and just saying, "Hey, I see you and I appreciate you." The words of kindness and appreciation does wonders.
Mhm. It's so simple, right? It's so
Simple.
simple, but so powerful. Just be kind.
Yeah.
Be a kind and caring leader. It does kind being kind and caring doesn't mean that you're soft.
No.
Okay? Let's just, like, put that out on the table right now, because there's a lot of people that think that, they mistake kindness for weakness,
Correct.
and that is a grave mistake because, kindness takes strength. It takes strength to be kind.
It's
Especially when
it's
someone is not
natural.
being kind to you, you
But
know?
it's natural. I always turn the negatives into a positive, and when there's a negative situation, I find the lesson that needs to be taught, and I put it in my toolbox, and I remember it, and then I develop a solution. But my team and me, we do things together,
Yeah. Yeah,
togetherness.
and have you had any and what did you do when you had team members that just they for some reason, they just couldn't get on the same page? What
They
were some
they
things?
eventually weed themselves out.
Mhm.
They eventually weed themselves out. So
But
I
how
don't
did they show up? How did they show up when that happened? Like, what were the signs that they just weren't getting on the same page? Like,
low productivity, poor communication.
poor communication, low
Yeah.
motivation, like,
Mhm. Low.
"Whatever, man. Whatever."
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, so to unblock the flow, I mean, I think, first of all, there is it has to be changed from the point of energy. Everything is energy. We have our own energy, we have individual energy, we have relational energy, we have collective energy, and, it really is about, like like Amanda was saying earlier, being able to suspend our own judgment and then feel into the undercurrents of what's going on and following the undercurrents because energy never lies. It always tells you
Mhm.
there's something going on. And if you are tuned into it, you can follow those undercurrents and go to the source of incoherent energy and try to be supportive in bringing that person into coherence because when a person comes into coherence, every all the answers we need are inside.
Correct.
We're helping them come into their own alignment because usually when we're not aligned from the inside, it shows up on the outside. The conflict from the inside shows up in the way we show up in the world, in the way that we relate to people. So we are heading down. We're trying to keep these episodes short, so we're gonna close out here in another 5 minutes. Is there any last minute like tidbits of advice or reflection or any kind of sharing you guys want to do on the topic?
Well, I would like to say an effective leader must have passion for what they do. Because when they have
Mhm.
passion and they have self-love, then it will reflect on their team and anything that they develop, any kind of decisions, it will show. So that's
Mhm.
very important that the leader has addressed the issues within themselves because how an individual perceives self can influence and distort the perception of the world around them. How
Mm.
you perceive things, how you interact with others really determines on what's going on inside. So
Mm.
being connected with self, being there, self-love and compassion will reflect on others.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Well said. Well said. So I just want to highlight something that Dr. Davies said repetitively was belonging, right? There's a difference between belonging. Belonging is that natural, grounded state versus fitting in. You know, fitting in is we're suspending our authenticity and who we truly are to try to fit into something. And so when it comes to an evolved leader believes and feels that they belong. So if a leader has any sort of imposter syndrome, I don't belong here, I don't feel, and they're trying to fit in to the role of the leader, you're not going to have that coherent field. So that leader has to believe enough in themselves to feel like they belong in the position that they're in. And that's something that I see a lot, is that somebody has a big, huge title, but they don't feel like they belong. And that's an internal thing, right? So they're trying to fit in and they're trying to adapt, but they're exchanging their authenticity. And anytime we exchange our authentic truth, we are always in an incoherent state. It will never help us. We are always, because what we feel and what we believe inside radiates out, and our words are energy and they align with that. So an evolved leader feels like they belong. They have an amazing sense of self-love and awareness of self. They're able to suspend self-judgment, to suspend judgment of others. Right?
Yeah.
That's what it takes. And as Dr. Davies mentioned several times, and they have passion, right?
Exactly.
Passion gives you energy.
They're passionate about their
And
people.
also, let's not forget about Carl Rogers. Unconditional positive regards, very important when we're dealing with human, dealing with other humans and different talents and different attitude. Like, you just got to accept them for who they are and work with it, mold it. And that's where resiliency is very important.
Oh, very, very
Flexible
important.
and adaptable.
Yep. I agree. Yeah, that's wonderful. That's beautiful. So just to kind of summarize everything, creating flow in teams, what does it look like? Well, it looks like, everyone is mutually trusting of one another. And because of that, they are contributing, they are working together. There is a flow. Things seem to be seamlessly, effortlessly happen because everyone knows their role. Everyone is seeing the same vision. Everyone's moving towards a common vision together. The way we fall out of flow, you take away psychological safety, criticize people, judge people, that you're gonna choke the flow real quick like that. So the idea is to not generate that kind of energy because that is corrosive. And then finally, we talked about how do we unblock it. Well, it's step out and be open, allow safety, to express one's ideas, appreciate, show that you care, be a caring leader that drops into the undercurrents. Let's not live in our heads. Let's get into our hearts and listen for any kind of incoherent energy that is an opportunity for us to step into our leadership and really be an inspiration to people. That's in a nutshell what we talked about. It all starts with coherent leadership, and just being a caring and kind human. So with that, we're going to close out this session and looking forward to next week. Again, we're going to keep talking about, coherence and flow, creating flow in all of its many forms. So with that, this is Suzette West, Amanda Carpenter, Dr. Davies. Thank you so much for joining me again. And until next time, everyone have an amazing weekend.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.